I'm going to just begin as I've begun every morning thus far this week, singing Zochreinu, remember us to life. Zochreinu lechaim, melech hafetz b'chaim, v'chodleinu v'sefer chaim l'manacha Elohim Chaim. This piece of liturgy, remember us to life, you who love life, write us in the book of life for your own sake, the living, dynamic God of life. Today's texts and practices focus especially on the fact that we are living. Whatever else is going on for us in this day, we are actually alive. And we're going to see that that fact, which we can sometimes forget, the significance of it or the actual truth of it, is going to be fairly central to our learning today. I see many familiar faces who've been joining us through the week, and I also welcome new folks. Every day we've been looking at a hero or a master of teshuvah, someone who the 8th century collection of midrash of legends holds up as an example of someone who can show us the way for how to do teshuvah, how to do repentance or return during these 10 days, where that is the focus in the spiritual calendar. And also every day, we've been looking at a text from a work that describes how to do teshuvah. Today, we're looking at someone new. We've been looking at Rav Kook for the past 3 days, and we have a new scholar. And then finally, there's always a new practice introduced. We started out with Taniti Bor, with limiting our speech, then looking at saying specific words, Psalm 130. And yesterday, we had the challenge of hitbodedut, of being alone with ourselves and speaking directly and personally and truly with the divine, however we conceive of them. And so before moving on to our texts, I'd love to hear about any reflections or questions for people who engaged really any of these practices, especially the hitbodedut. And I'll take a moment just to look in the chat if people want to type any experiences they had or any questions about that practice. And for those of you who are looking for the source sheet, it is posted in the group chat. And I do know that there is going to be PDFs of each of the source sheets that will be posted with the YouTube videos for past classes. And if they aren't already there, they will be there in the coming days. That is the plan at the very least. All right. Any questions or thought about any of these spiritual practices? All right. I'm going to be moving on, but I do want to say that going from not talking to saying holy words to speaking to God is going to lead us to today's practice, which I'm going to talk about at the end, but I'm going to frame for now as speaking truth to ourselves. And I see from Janet, hitbodedut is something that she often does. So this is a practice that was not new to her. Wonderful. Okay, so for today's master of teshuvah, we're going to be looking for the first time not at a biblical character, but at a character from the Talmud. And I want to just also share Ginger's comment. Thank you, Ginger. I found each practice brought me to a different level of who am I, right? A central question of this season. Who am I? Because I am a living creature. Who could I become? Because I am not a static being. Who am I today? Who am I in this moment? So our Talmudic character today is introduced by another Talmudic character, Ben Azai, who says, as we've seen every time, this is our frame for each of the models and masters of teshuvah. Know the power of teshuvah. Teda lecha koach hateshuvah bo ura'eh. Come and see Rabbi Shimon, son of Lachish. And some of you who are somewhat familiar with characters and teachers in the Babylonian Talmud might be wondering, Rabbi Shimon, son of Lachish, is that Resh Lachish? And it is. And we're going to see now at least one of his origin stories. He has several. But here is what the Pirkei de Rebbe Eliezer choose as his origin story for this particular moment of modeling teshuvah. So Rabbi Shimon, son of Lachish, with two of his friends in the mountains, were robbing all who passed them on the way. What did he do? He forsook his two companions who were plundering on the mountains, and he returned to the God of his ancestors with all his heart. We'll notice this all his heart that we had also yesterday, a central piece of teshuvah, is doing it with all your heart. Fasting and praying, he arose early and retired late before the Holy One, blessed be, and was studying Torah all the rest of his days and giving gifts to the needy. He did not return anymore to his evil deeds, and his repentance, his teshuvah, was accepted. On the day when he died, his two companions who were plundering on the mountains also died. And they gave a portion in the treasury of the living to Rabbi Shimon, son of Lachish, but his two companions were put in the lowest Sheol, or Sheol. I'm going to stop for a minute and just go over this piece before we go to the next practice. And I see a question from Franna. Was Ben Azai the one who became a heretic? No, that was Elisha ben Abuya, but he was one of the four who went into the Pardes, into the orchard, and there are different ideas of what that meant. Okay, so you got one of them for sure. Okay, so what's happening in our story? We've got a crew of three people. Notice 3 people is a Beit Din, right? 3 people is a meaningful number. A Beit Din is a rabbinical court. It means it can actually affect things like a change in status for a convert, right? It can adjudicate cases. So 3 people together is a strong number. And Resh Lachish and his 2 buddies who are unnamed spend all of their time living in the mountains. And we assume, they've picked a good spot where they know they can't be seen. And when people pass, they don't know that there are people hiding behind those trees, right? They don't know this is a dangerous spot. The robbers come out, take everything they've got, right? And that's how they're making their living, by robbing in the mountains. And then, yes, I'm getting to Sheol. And then I will definitely talk about what it means. And then we don't know why Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish stops. In this story, it doesn't tell us. Later in the Talmud, there's a whole story about Reish Lakish and how he changes. But right now, he's Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, and they don't tell us why. They just say one day he stops, right? It's very, very open. What did he do? It's not what did he think? What did he realize? What did he remember? None of this. What did he do? He forsook. He left the people who encouraged and participated in this bad behavior, and he changed his behavior. He just stopped doing it. He returned to God with all his heart. He fasted, he prayed, he got up early, he went to bed late before God and just studied Torah all the time, and started, instead of taking from people, he gave to those who needed. And then we hear he never did return to his evil deeds. And his repentance was accepted. And interestingly enough, I love this piece of the story. All three of them, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish and his two buddies, all somehow died on the exact same day. And Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish was accorded a place in the equivalent of the heavens, right? And his two buddies, who we are told continued doing their robbing, they ended up in Sheol, which, as some people have noted, as Angela noted, Jewish version of the Underworld. This is kind of a parallel to Hades, to hell. For those of you who are wondering, wait a minute, a Jewish version of hell? There are many different ideas of Jewish heaven and hell. And by the way, not just two of them, but many levels of both, right? And so this is a complex subject. There is not one idea in Judaism. Some people might say, wait a minute, I thought Judaism was focused only on this world. We don't do heaven and hell. Oh, yes, we have many, many different kinds of heavens, many different kinds of hells. And in some ways, what I like to say is it's a literary exploration of possibility. There is no one answer, right? But for the purposes of this particular midrash, this particular legend, they want us to know that it is possible to do teshuvah, and it matters for your assignment, right? And by the way, also these assignments in many of the stories are not permanent. Okay, but now we still have a bit of our story to go. The two companions spoke before the Holy One, blessed be, sovereign of all the universe. There is before you respect for certain persons. This one was plundering with us on the mountains, and now he's in the treasury of the living, while the other men, i.e. us, were in the lowest Sheol. So that the two guys who were with Rabbi Shimon are saying, God, look, we were all doing this together. And Rabbi Shimon is somewhere else, up high, and we're way down low. What's up with that? And the Holy One says to them, I'm going to change that to they, said to them, this one repented in his lifetime. Rabbi Shimon did teshuvah while he was living, but you have not done teshuvah. So they say back to the divine, give us the opportunity, and we will do teshuvah very sincerely, not just to get our place out of this low Sheol and into a higher treasury of the living, but with our whole hearts, we will do teshuvah. And the divine answers, repentance is only possible until one's death. You can only do this work while you're alive. And this to me is a haunting and chilling reminder that as humans who in our tradition have both a soul and a body, we are a combination of the divine and the earth. And our work, the work that we are put here to do, which is individual to each of us, and is each of us, it's our journey to figure out what our work is in this lifetime. It can only be done while we're living. That's our window of opportunity. And up until the last moment. But that's our work. And so I want to ask, I'm going to move into the next text for teshuvah, just because I'm looking at the time, but are there any other questions or comments or reflections just about this story? I'll give it a minute before I move on. I see Janet posted a proverb that also deals with this, right? There are consequences. There are consequences. And sometimes we don't see those consequences in our world. Yesterday we looked at a text that says, "Eat din v'eat dayan," there is justice and there is a judge. But we saw yesterday in Jefferson County, there isn't always justice that we see. There isn't always. But there is, we are told in the tradition at least, ultimately. And it's our work to work towards that. Okay, moving on. By the way, there's a parable that I'll just read very quickly that the Midrash continues. I just want to show you that the Midrash today is making sure we get the point. It tells us the story. It has a coda, an afterword to the story. And now it's giving us a further parable to make sure we understand this. You have to do this while you're living. To what is the matter comparable? To a person who wished to take a voyage at sea. If he didn't take with him bread and water from an inhabited land, if you don't bring supplies, you're not going to find them on the sea. Again, if a person wishes to go to the desert, to the end of the wilderness, unless they take from some inhabited place bread and water, they will not find anything to eat or drink. Likewise, if you didn't do teshuvah in your lifetime, you don't have the supplies. You don't have breath and life in order to do teshuvah. But God gives to a person according to their ways, as it is said in Jeremiah, I, Adonai, search the heart again. I try the reins, even to give every person according to their ways, according to the fruit of their doings. And so our text for today from the Rambam, from Maimonides, is his famous Hilchot Teshuvah, the laws of teshuvah, of return, of repentance, where he sets out 4 steps for how to do this work, how to return. If you're not Rabbi Shimon and you don't start fasting and praying and studying Torah all day and waking up early and going to bed late, what do you do just for your normal everyday sins? You haven't been a robber, right? But what do? What is teshuvah? What is the process? The one who sinned will leave it, remove it from their thoughts, commit wholeheartedly not to do it again. Even as is said, we get a verse from Isaiah, let the wicked forsake their way. So too shall they regret the past. Even as is said, surely after that I was turned, I repented, I regretted. And they should confess to the one who knows all secrets that they will not turn to repeat that sin again, according to what is said from Hosea, say unto them, neither will we call any more the work of our hands our gods. And one needs to confess with their lips and to say all that which they committed in their heart out loud. This is one reason why we had Hitbodedut practice before today's practice, because we're practicing now speaking things out loud to God. So again, a quick review of the Rambam's important 4 steps Leave what you're doing. Commit not to do it again. Don't just say, oh, that's what I did it. No, I'm not going to do it again. Regret it. And this is an important stage. This actually helps us change our behavior, taking time to feel the emotions or the feelings in our body of what it felt like to do something wrong. To say, I don't want to yell again is one thing. But then to remember how we felt after we yelled and realize it didn't help anything and it just made us feel worse. To stick with that feeling is what can help us change our behavior. And finally, we say out loud to God, important step, can't be skipped, what we did. And that is the process of teshuvah. I want to make one qualification to this. These 4 steps are just between what we do that only affects the divine. If we do anything that involves another person, then we certainly have to apologize to them. Important caveat, centering their needs and not our own. So if we don't think they're open to this, or if they don't want to hear from us, we cannot force them. We center their needs and not our own when doing teshuvah. And also we have to make restitution. Whatever it is we took, if we're a robber, right? Whatever it is we did, we have to attempt to make restitution. So it's different between people, but anything that we do between people, also it is accounted that we are doing it against God, because what are people but other images of God? And so we also go through this process with God. But with God, we don't need to apologize in the same way or offer restitution. We leave it, commit to not doing it again, regret it, and say out loud what we did. And the 4th one, which by the way, to me is a culmination. We have to go through the rest of it before we can get to the saying it out loud, is our vidui, our confession that we do on Yom Kippur. And for those of you who've gone through the Matzor, the prayers for the high holidays, you know that there are lists upon lists of Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, ay, 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 ay. We even sing with them, right? And Al Chet Shechatanu, right? On these sins that we have done, on the things that we are guilty for, where we have betrayed. There are alphabetically listed whole confessions for the things that we have done, that we are confessing now. And we do it in the plural. But my suggestion for our practice for today is to take some time, and if you have a list of the traditional ones, maybe look at that to get your juices flowing. But maybe you don't need to do that. Make a list of your own confessions, of your own things that you want to leave and change and do better and differently in the coming year. And to help you think about them, I'm just going to read some of the confessions that were crowdsourced last year. You think, oh my gosh, last year must have been so different. Everything that I would confess this year would be so different in this different year. But I want to just share some of the ones that people offered and see if any of them resonate. For the sins we committed against you, by taking strange comfort in outrage and self-righteous affront, for spending way too much time on social media and not enough time creating, for losing my patience, for losing my hope and falling into despair, for not listening carefully, for allowing myself to hate others because I am scared that they hate my people, for procrastinating guiltily and worrying when I should be working, for holding on to resentments, for letting other people's reactions to my disability preoccupy me, for texting at red lights, for not asking for help when I need it because I fear not being enough, for spending way too much time in angst watching cable news, for not keeping my word to myself, for holding on to hurts and not letting go, for not letting go of the past. These are just some of the possibilities. And I really recommend you take some quiet time and just write for yourself a few others. And I see that there are some comments and discussion in the chat. That's fantastic. If there aren't any questions, I'm going to move us towards closing, in which every day we've also closed following Rabbi Nachman's teaching, the great Hasidic rabbi, that whenever we learn together, we should make out of our learning a prayer. So I'm going to suggest for our prayer today that we be moved to do the work to inquire into ourselves what isn't working, to be able to face it truly, to be able to write it down, to find the fortitude to let that be an opening to writing more, and to have this work that we do be of benefit to ourselves in our life and in our living, to make a better, more complete life that will create more benefit for all. Ken Yuretzon, may it be so. Thank you for your learning. Thank you for your practice. I look forward to seeing some of you, hopefully many of you, tomorrow as we close our week of learning together and move one step closer to Yom Kippur and also to having a beautiful Shabbat before we begin Yom Kippur. Thank you so, so much.